Hi, and welcome to Historical Influence. Here, we explore amazing stories of people and events that shaped our history. Join us to learn, discover, and get inspired by the past in a fun and engaging way. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, is widely regarded as one of America's greatest heroes. Serving from 1861 until his assassination in 1865, he led the nation through its most trying time, the American Civil War. His leadership was instrumental in preserving the Union, defeating the Confederate States, and initiating the abolition of slavery. His rise from humble beginnings to the nation's highest office is a remarkable story. Lincoln's legacy is that of a national martyr and hero, a man who fought to preserve the nation and championed human liberty. By the 1850s, the United States was a nation deeply divided over the issue of slavery. The passage of the Kansas-Nebraska Act in 1854, which allowed territories to decide on slavery for themselves, intensified the conflict. This act repealed the Missouri Compromise and provoked violent opposition, ultimately leading to the formation of the new Republican Party. Further fueling the fire was the Supreme Court's 1857 Dred Scott decision, which declared that black people were not citizens and had no rights under the Constitution. This ruling sparked outrage in the North, with Lincoln denouncing it as a conspiracy to expand the slave power. Following Lincoln's election in November 1860, the crisis reached its peak. Before he could even take office, 7 Southern states seceded from the Union, forming the Confederate States of America. President-elect Lincoln refused to recognize the Confederacy, declaring secession illegal. By his inauguration in March 1861, the nation stood on the brink of war. Abraham Lincoln was born into poverty on February 12, 1809. In a log cabin in Kentucky. His family later moved to Indiana, where they lived a difficult frontier life. Tragedy struck when Lincoln was 9. His mother, Nancy Hanks Lincoln, died from milk sickness. His father, Thomas, later remarried Sarah Bush Johnston, a strong and affectionate woman who encouraged young Abraham to read. Lincoln was largely self-educated. His formal schooling was sporadic, totaling less than 12 months, but he was an avid reader with a lifelong passion for learning. After moving to Illinois as a young man, he struck out on his own, working various jobs, including shopkeeper and postmaster in New Salem. Determined to become a lawyer, he taught himself the law by reading texts like Blackstone's commentaries. He was admitted to the Illinois bar in 1837 and moved to Springfield to begin his practice. As a prairie lawyer, he handled a wide variety of cases, from transportation disputes to criminal trials, gaining a reputation for his sharp legal mind. Lincoln's political career began in 1834 when he was elected to the Illinois state legislature as a member of the Whig Party. He later served a single term in the U.S. House of Representatives from 1847 to 1849, where he spoke out against the Mexican-American War. The Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 reignited his political ambition. He joined the newly formed Republican Party, a party dedicated to opposing the extension of slavery. He gained national attention in the 1858 Senate debates against Stephen A. Douglas. Though he lost the election, his powerful arguments against slavery and his stark warning that a house divided against itself cannot stand elevated his profile. His fame grew after a powerful speech at Cooper Union in New York in 1860, where he demonstrated intellectual leadership that brought him into contention for the presidency. Exploiting his frontier image as the rail candidate, his supporters helped him secure the Republican nomination for president. In the four-way race of 1860, Lincoln won the presidency with strong support from the North and West, but without a single ballot cast for him in 10 southern states. When Confederate forces fired on Fort Sumter in April 1861, the Civil War began. As Commander-in-Chief, Lincoln took executive control of the war effort, exercising unprecedented authority. He expanded his war powers, imposed a naval blockade, and suspended the writ of habeas corpus, allowing for the arrest of suspected Confederate sympathizers without formal charges. His primary goals were to defend Washington, D.C. and conduct an aggressive war for a quick victory. He closely supervised military strategy, including the selection of generals. He struggled with commanders like George B. McClellan, whom he found too cautious, but eventually promoted Ulysses S. Grant to lead all Union armies after his decisive victories. On January 1, 1863, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, freeing all enslaved people in the rebellious states. This historic act transformed the war's purpose from merely preserving the Union to also abolishing slavery. Later that year, he delivered the Gettysburg Address, redefining the nation's purpose as one conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Lincoln's presidency was fraught with challenges and criticism. He had to navigate between contentious factions within his own party. Radical Republicans criticized him for moving too slowly to abolish slavery, while anti-war Democrats, known as Copperheads, attacked him for refusing the compromise. The war effort itself was grueling. The early years saw a series of demoralizing Union defeats. Lincoln was often at odds with his generals, frustrated by their inaction or poor strategies. The immense casualties from battles like Antietam and Grant's bloody Overland Campaign took a heavy toll on the nation and on Lincoln personally. By the summer of 1864, with the war dragging on and Union victories elusive, Lincoln became convinced he would lose his re-election bid. He even prepared a confidential memo pledging to cooperate with his successor to save the Union before the inauguration. But key military victories, particularly the capture of Atlanta, turned public opinion, and he won re-election decisively. On April 9, 1865, Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered, effectively ending the Civil War. 5 days later, on the evening of April 14, 1865, President Lincoln and his wife attended a play, Our American Cousin, at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. That night, John Wilkes Booth, a well-known actor and Confederate sympathizer, snuck into the presidential box. He crept up behind Lincoln and fired a single shot into the back of the president's head, mortally wounding him. Booth then leaped to the stage and escaped. The dying president was carried across the street to the Peterson House. He remained in a coma for 9 hours before dying at 7:22 the next morning on April 15, 1865, at the age of 56. His assassination, just as the nation was beginning to heal, made him a national martyr. Abraham Lincoln is consistently ranked by scholars and the public as one of the greatest presidents in American history. He is remembered for his wartime leadership, his success in preserving the Union, and his monumental role in abolishing slavery. He is often called the Great Emancipator. His words, such as the Gettysburg Address and his second inaugural address, have become iconic texts in American history, defining the nation's ideals of democracy and equality. Memorials across the country, including the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., and his portrait on the penny and the $5 bill, commemorate his enduring impact. His philosophy was perhaps best captured in his call for malice toward none, with charity for all, to bind up the nation's wounds. Beyond his presidency, Lincoln had a fascinating life. At 6 feet 4 inches, he was a tall and muscular man, known in his youth for his physical strength and skill as a wrestler. In fact, he had only one recorded loss in about 12 years and was posthumously honored by the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. He is also the only U.S. president to hold a patent. In 1849, he patented a device for lifting riverboats over shallow waters, though it was never commercialized. Lincoln did not grow his trademarked beard until after he was elected president in 1860, reportedly at the suggestion of an 11-year-old girl named Grace Bedell. Abraham Lincoln's leadership through the nation's greatest crisis secured his place as a defining figure in American history. His eloquent support for democracy and his insistence that the Union was worth saving continued to embody the ideals of self-government for all nations. Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that shaped our world.